The night air felt warm and sweet as the traveler stepped into the village square, expecting music and harmless celebration. Yet something in the silence under the lanterns felt far too rehearsed. The crowd had parted as if guided by a single breath, watching with eyes that gleamed brighter than the fire beginning to roar behind them. Sparks rose and curled into shapes that shouldn't exist, bending like they were pulled by invisible hands. The drums didn't start. They waited. And when the first ember twisted toward the sky, the voices rose in a whisper, chanting a name that froze the travelers' bones. It was their own. Every face turned toward the fire as the flames leaned inward, almost beckoning. And the question slammed into the traveler's mind like a warning. What kind of festival chants for a stranger chosen before they even arrived? The drums finally struck their first beat, slow and heavy, echoing through the stone walls like a heartbeat meant to sync with every listener. The crowd leaned in, tightening the circle, their shadows stretching long across the ground as the fire's glow rose and fell like breathing. The traveler felt the heat wash over their face, stronger than any normal flame should be, and a tremor shook the earth beneath their feet. Every instinct screamed to run. But the only path out was sealed by rows of silent watchers. The chanting grew louder, clearer, and impossibly unified, as though a single voice moved through many mouths. And with every repeated word, it felt like the flames were learning the rhythm of the traveler's pulse. The drums deepened into a rhythm that felt older than the stones beneath the traveler's boots. A gust of wind cut through the square, scattering embers like stars breaking free from gravity. The villagers lifted their hands in unison, forming a gesture carved onto every house door the traveler had passed earlier. The fire responded instantly, shrinking inward as if inhaling, then roaring outward with a force that rattled wooden beams. A whisper skimmed across the traveler's ear, a single word, too faint to understand, but spoken with chilling certainty. Their stomach tightened as they realized the fire wasn't reacting to the crowd. It was reacting to them. The traveler took a single step backward, but the stone beneath their heel shifted, as if nudged by something unseen. The circle tightened again, not hostile, but determined, driven by a belief older than reason. The fire dimmed to a low, throbbing glow, and the chanting fell to a whisper so soft it blended with the crackling wood. A cold sensation brushed across the traveler's spine, like a hand made of smoke trailing upward. They turned slightly, searching for any exit, but every pathway dissolved into silhouettes and flame. The village hadn't been celebrating. It had been preparing. A sudden burst of sparks shot upward, revealing symbols carved high on the surrounding wooden beams that the traveler hadn't noticed before. Each symbol flickered with the same rhythm as the fire, as though the entire village breathed together. The chanting died instantly. Silence fell with terrifying weight, stretching long enough for the traveler's heartbeat to fill the space. Then the flames twisted into a narrow spiral and pointed directly at them, as if choosing them openly before the entire crowd. A single villager gasped, and in that breathless second, the traveler realized the festival had never been about joy. It had been waiting for a sign. The moment the spiral of flame chose its direction, the villagers dropped to their knees, as if the ground had pulled them downward. The sudden shift sent a tremor through the traveler's chest, tightening their breath as the fire grew taller, brighter, stretching like a beacon meant to summon something from the mountains above. A low rumble rolled across the valley, far too steady to be thunder. The air thickened with heat and whispers, every sound pressing closer, as though the night itself leaned in to listen. Something old, something unseen had awakened, and the villagers seemed terrified and devoted all at once. The traveler felt a new pressure at their back, a calm force nudging them toward the fire, almost guiding, almost claiming. A gust swept through the square, scattering ashes across the stones and pushing the traveler's hair back, like a warning from the wind itself. The fire lowered subtly, then flared outward in a wave that forced the villagers to shield their faces. A deep hum rose from the stones beneath the traveler's boots, vibrating through their legs like a heartbeat not their own. The hums synchronized with the breaking pulses of the flame, each throb pulling at their chest with invisible threads. Somewhere behind the rows of houses, bells chimed softly. No hands touching them. The traveler felt the weight of unseen eyes settling on them, as though the mountains themselves were watching. The humming beneath the traveler's feet intensified until it felt like the ground was breathing alongside them. The villagers rose slowly, every movement perfectly timed, their eyes focused not on the fire but on the traveler's silhouette against it. A faint glow shimmered at the edges of the stones, tracing patterns that pulsed inward toward the fire, as though following a ritual pathway. The traveler stepped back instinctively, but the glow followed, matching their movements. A distant crack rang out from the forest, loud enough to silence the murmurs. Something out there had answered the flame. The villagers parted again, opening a narrow path that led away from the fire and toward a shadowed structure at the far end of the square. It was older than the houses, built from dark stone that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. The traveler felt their heartbeat quicken as the air shifted colder, pressing against their skin like a warning. The chanting resumed softly, now directed toward the structure rather than the fire. The traveler hesitated, uncertain whether stepping forward meant survival or surrender. Yet the path behind them had vanished beneath rows of silent eyes, leaving only one direction open. The traveler took a careful step toward the shrine, and the flames behind them dimmed instantly, as if conserving their strength for whatever came next. Each footstep echoed across the square, the sound unnaturally clear, as though the world held its breath. The villagers began a soft, rhythmic chant that rose and fell like waves hitting shore. As the traveler came closer to the shrine, the symbols carved into its stone shimmered faintly, matching the pulse of the fire behind them. A sensation crept up the traveler's spine. Something inside the shrine was awake, aware, and waiting. The cold air around the shrine thickened as the traveler drew closer, wrapping their skin in a strange, heavy stillness. Every sound from the village square faded, leaving only the soft crackle of distant flame and the low pulse coming from the stone itself. The carvings flickered like veins carrying light instead of blood, guiding the traveler's eyes toward a narrow opening at the base of the shrine. A faint breeze drifted from within, carrying a whisper too soft to understand but powerful enough to stir the traveler's heartbeat. The villagers held their breath behind them, waiting as if this moment had already been lived in stories. The traveler reached out a trembling hand, unsure if touching the stone would reveal truth or unleash something far older than fear. The moment the traveler's fingertips brushed the carvings, a deep vibration surged through the stone, traveling up their arm and into their chest like a sudden jolt of lightning wrapped in heat. Their breath hitched as the ground beneath shifted with a slow groan, followed by a thin crack opening along the shrine's base. A warm glow spilled out, expanding across the ground like slow-moving firelight. Behind them, the villagers murmured in disbelief, their voices trembling between hope and terror. The traveler stepped back, instinct urging retreat, but the glow crawled after them as if unwilling to let them go. Something inside the shrine had responded, and it wasn't finished. The glowing crack widened, releasing a pulse of warm air that felt like a breath exhaled from deep within the earth. The traveler stumbled back as dust lifted in tiny spirals, pulled upward by an invisible force. The carvings across the shrine brightened until they resembled tiny suns pressed into the stone. The chanting behind them faltered, breaking into scattered whispers as villagers stepped away in fear. The traveler felt a sudden tug, not physical, but emotional, drawing them toward the opening, filling their chest with the strange sense that they were meant to see what lay beyond. But the fear twisting through their stomach fought back, reminding them that not every calling was meant to be answered. The air shifted again, this time colder, swirling around the traveler's ankles with a slow, circling motion. A soft hum rose from within the shrine, resonant and steady, like a voice trying to form a word. The villagers quieted, leaning forward with their hands pressed together, waiting for a sign they feared yet desperately wanted. The traveler hesitated, torn between stepping back to safety and moving forward into the unknown glow. A sudden, sharp pulse of warmth shot across the stones, brushing past their feet like a signal meant only for them. The shrill cry of a bird echoed from the forest, slicing through the silence as if warning them not to go any closer. The hum inside the shrine grew louder, rising until it felt like the entire square vibrated with its rhythm. The traveler's pulse sensed with it, each heartbeat landing heavier than the last. The opening at the base of the shrine widened a final inch, then released a faint, smooth streak of glowing ember-like dust that drifted toward the traveler, hovering inches from their face. It didn't burn. Instead, it shimmered like living light, reacting to their breath. The villagers gasped, recognizing something the traveler didn't. The glow flickered once, twice, then shot upward and vanished into the night sky, leaving a silence so deep it felt like the world had paused to listen for what would happen next. The ember dust vanished into the darkness, but the warmth it left behind lingered against the traveler's skin like a silent claim. The villagers rose slowly, their eyes shining with a mixture of awe and dread, as if they'd witnessed the start of something they could no longer control. The fire behind them roared back to life without warning, sending a bright flare into the sky as though answering the shrine's signal. The traveler staggered back from the glow, every instinct urging them to run, yet something deeper, something almost familiar, pulled them toward the stone again. The ground trembled once more, softer than before, but undeniably alive. The traveler realized with a tightening breath that the ritual wasn't reaching its end. It was only now waking up. The fire pulsed hard enough to push a wave of heat across the square, forcing the traveler to shield their face. When the flames lowered again, a new sound rose from within the shrine. A deep, rhythmic throb that matched none of the earlier hums. It was heavier, older, and carried a strange echo that seemed to bounce through the traveler's chest. The villagers moved back, giving the traveler space as though they feared being too close to what might emerge. A thin line of glowing dust seeped out from the shrine's crack, curling through the air like a searching hand. The traveler's heart thudded unevenly as the dust drifted toward them, waiting to see how they would respond. The glowing dust drifted closer, swirling into shapes that stretched like fingertips reaching for the traveler. The cold air sharpened, filling their lungs with a strangely metallic taste. The villagers whispered frantic prayers between breaths, their gazes locked on the forming shapes. The traveler stood rooted to the spot, unable to tell whether the dust beckoned or warned. A sudden spark leaped from the fire, spiraling upward to join the drifting glow, and for a moment the world seemed to tilt. The glow brightened sharply, bursting into a small shower of swirling light that danced around the traveler's shoulders like a crown made of flame. The square fell silent as the dust settled slowly onto their skin. A shiver ran through the traveler's body as the dust settled, sinking into their skin with a faint warmth that spread through their chest. The world around them pulsed once, as if the entire village took a single shared breath. The villagers stepped back in unison, fear flickering in their eyes, not fear of the fire, nor the shrine, but fear of the traveler. The chanting returned, softer this time, almost mournful, echoing through the square like a warning wrapped in sorrow. The traveler felt a sudden jolt of strength in their limbs, a strange clarity sharpening their senses. It didn't feel natural. It felt inherited, as if they carried a spark that had been meant for someone else. The traveler took one steady breath, then another, trying to understand the strange strength coursing through them. But before they could make sense of it, the shrine answered with a sudden, deafening crack that split the night. A surge of glowing air rushed outward, knocking dust and ash into spirals that lifted high above the square. The traveler barely remained standing as the ground beneath them pulsed with a powerful heartbeat. Something inside the shrine moved. a shadow shifting in the glow, too quick and too large to be human. The villagers scattered backward, fear replacing reverence. The traveler stared at the widening crack and felt the truth settle like ice in their stomach. The ritual wasn't about choosing them. It was about unlocking something that had waited for them. The glow from the widening crack pulsed like a heartbeat, each throb shaking dust from the shrine walls as the traveler stepped back, feeling heat and cold wrap around them in waves. The villagers huddled together, whispering words that trembled in the air, their fear now sharper than their devotion. Another pulse surged outward, stronger this time, brushing against the traveler's chest with a force that felt like recognition. The air thickened until breathing felt like dragging wind through stone. A shape shifted again inside the shrine, clearer now, stretching upward like something reclaiming space it once owned. The traveler felt the ember dust in their skin stir in response, warming their veins. They didn't know whether they were meant to stop what was coming, or lead it into the world. The traveler's breath hitched as the light inside the shrine dimmed suddenly, as though pulling back to gather strength. The square fell into uneasy silence, broken only by the soft crackle of distant embers. Then a thin streak of glowing dust shot upward from the opening, spiraling into the sky before scattering across the stars, like sparks fleeing gravity. The villagers gasped, dropping to their knees in unison, convinced the final sign had begun. The traveler felt heat coil around their spine, rising until their heartbeat pounded in their ears. They could sense it now. The presence inside the shrine, ancient and heavy, waiting for the next breath, the next movement. The traveler raised a trembling hand toward the crack without understanding why. A deep vibration rose from the shrine floor, humming through the square and rattling the stones beneath everyone's feet. Why? The traveler staggered, feeling the same hum ricochet through their ribs like a distant memory being forced awake. The crack widened with a sudden spike of light, and a cloud of ember dust burst outward, swirling around the traveler in a tight spiral before settling on the ground. Heat rolled across the space, pushing villagers even farther back. The traveler's pulse synced perfectly with the hum, and they felt the strange strength from before flare through their chest again. The presence inside the shrine shifted once more, and this time the traveler heard it, one clear, heavy breath echoing through the stone. The breath from the shrine faded, but its echo lingered, pressing into the traveler's chest with strange familiarity. The villagers dared not move, watching with eyes wide and hollow as though witnessing a prophecy unravel too quickly. The fire behind them shifted again, bending toward the shrine, flames narrowing into a single long arc, pointing straight at the traveler. They felt the ember dust inside them warm even more, glowing faintly beneath their skin. The shrine's hum rose steadily until the traveler's bones vibrated with it, urging them closer. Every part of their body resisted, yet their feet inched forward against their will, drawn like iron to a magnet. Whatever waited inside wasn't calling the villagers, it was calling them alone. The traveler's foot touched the final stone before the shrine, and the world answered. A thunderous pulse erupted from the crack, blasting outward with a force that threw villagers to the ground and snuffed out lanterns across the square. The fire collapsed inward, sucked toward the shrine as if devoured by an unseen hunger. The traveler stood against the wave, barely keeping their balance as ember dust exploded upward, spiraling into the night in a roar of light. A massive shadow inside the shrine shifted forward, slow, deliberate, heavy with purpose. As the glow faded just enough to reveal its outline, the traveler's heart clenched with a sudden, chilling certainty. The presence hadn't been waiting to escape. It had been waiting for them to open the way. The dust settled slowly, drifting like fading stars, as the traveler stared at the shadow stirring behind the cracked stone. The air grew impossibly still, heavy enough to feel like it pressed against their ribs with every shallow breath. The villagers had collapsed into trembling silence, too frightened to lift their heads. The traveler felt a pull deep in their chest, a warm pulse responding to whatever stood within the shrine. It was as if their heartbeat no longer belonged to them, but beat in rhythm with something older. Something impossibly vast. The glow along the carvings dimmed and flared again, illuminating the faint outline of a hand, large, ember-like, reaching through the crack. The traveler's skin lit with the same soft glow, answering the presence without their consent. The hand withdrew just enough to vanish back into darkness, but the traveler could sense it waiting, observing, thinking. Then the hum returned, deeper than before, vibrating through the stones and echoing through the traveler's chest until their breath sensed with it again. A faint whisper filled the square, not with words, but with the weight of something ancient trying to shape sound for the first time in centuries. Every villager bowed, shaking, but the traveler stood frozen, feeling the ember dust rise within them like sparks waking under wind. Their vision sharpened around the edges, and for a moment they saw the glow inside the shrine shift like a heartbeat made of fire. The realization hit them hard. The presence wasn't emerging. It was bonding. The hum surged suddenly, rippling through the traveler's chest like a rush of fire sweeping through dry leaves. Their knees nearly buckled under the wave of heat, but the warmth didn't burn. It flowed, shaping itself inside them. The villagers gasped in unison as a faint shimmer lifted from the ground beneath the traveler's feet, swirling upward like fragments of the earlier ember dust. The shrine answered with a bright flash that lit the entire square, revealing the shadow inside more clearly. Tall, with a torso shaped from flame and smoke, shifting like a living ember sculpted by the wind. The travelers' pulse raced as they realized the shape wasn't forcing its way out. It was pushing its essence into them. The traveler stumbled forward as their vision blurred with amber light, the warmth rushing through their veins now fierce enough to shake their breath loose. Every heartbeat felt like a drum echoing through the square. The villagers whispered in terror, finally seeing the truth etched into the glowing shrine. This wasn't a summoning. It was emerging. The traveler's hands trembled as lines of faint golden light traced across their skin, branching like tiny rivers of fire. The presence inside the shrine pushed closer to the crack, shaping itself with growing clarity. The traveler felt a sudden pressure behind their eyes, a pull so strong they almost took another step toward it, until a hand grabbed their arm. The traveler blinked hard, fighting the pull that tightened around their chest like invisible hands guiding them toward the crack. Mira's grip anchored them, but the warmth inside continued to climb, rising behind their ribs like a second heartbeat trying to overpower their own. The shadow inside the shrine leaned closer to the opening, its movements slow but deliberate, as if savoring the moment before, stepping into a world that barely remembered it. The villagers crawled backward across the stones, desperate to escape but too terrified to turn away. The traveler felt the final surge building, heat rising, light gathering, the presence reaching out with a force impossible to resist. And then the fire behind them roared upward like a warning, shaking the ground as if urging them to choose: resist the merging, or let the presence claim them completely. The warmth inside the traveler surged until it felt like their chest might burst, the glow under their skin pulsing in sharp, demanding waves. The presence inside the shrine pushed forward with a low, thunderous rumble that shook loose shards of glowing stone. The fire behind them roared in answer, bending sharply toward the traveler as if urging them to break free. Mira's grip tightened, grounding them against the invisible pull, her breath trembling with fear she refused to let whip. The villagers could no longer kneel. They crawled backward, eyes wide with terror as the air thickened with heat and pressure. The traveler felt their legs wobble, every instinct screaming that this moment was the one the ritual had been built for. Yet something inside whispered that they still had a choice. The cracking stone split wider with a sharp snap, letting a flood of molten glow spill across the ground like rising dawn. The traveler stumbled forward as the presence reached for them again, not with force but with familiarity, an echo inside their chest calling for completion. The warmth coursing through their veins brightened into sharp, branching streaks beneath their skin. With each pulse, they felt stronger, Faster, different. Mira pulled harder, desperate to keep them from crossing the threshold. Behind them, the fire twisted violently, sending sparks shooting through the air like frantic warnings. The traveler could feel both forces fighting for them, each one certain that their choice would shape everything that came after. The shrine's hum deepened until it felt like the whole mountain vibrated with the voice of something half forgotten. The traveler felt the pull again, stronger now, sharp as a hook tugging at their ribs. Their breath turned hot, every inhale fanning the glow under their skin. Mira shouted something, her voice cracking under the strain, but the sound warped in the heavy air, stretched and swallowed by the hum. The traveler's vision blurred with amber light, shapes bending around the edges as if the world were reshaping itself. The shadow inside the crack leaned near enough for its outline to ripple like rising heat. The traveler realized then that if they stepped forward, they wouldn't just release the presence. They would become its vessel. Heat rolled through the square in a final sweeping wave, pushing every villager flat to the ground. The traveler felt the presence push forward, filling their head with a sudden rush of emotion, loneliness, anger, longing, all tangled like smoke. Their knees buckled, and for a moment they felt themselves slipping, the border between their thoughts and the presence dissolving. Mira's voice cut through the chaos, louder than the hum, sharp with fear and hope. The traveler blinked hard, fighting to hold on as the heat inside them built to a breaking point. The glow reached their fingertips, sparking bright enough to turn night into dawn for a heartbeat. They knew they had only a second left to choose. Step into the shrine's call or break its hold forever. The final hum rose like a storm, and the traveler felt the force inside them reach its peak. A burning clarity that sharpened every sound, every breath. The presence pushed hard, urging them forward into the glowing crack. But Mira's grip tightened, anchoring them to the world with a strength fueled by fear and something deeper. A sudden instinct surged through the traveler, wild and desperate. Instead of stepping toward the shrine, they tore their arm free, not from Mira, but from the pull. The glow inside them flared outward in a blinding burst that split the air with a thunderclap. The shrine's crack snapped shut with a violent boom, trapping the presence inside. The ground trembled, the fire collapsed, and the glow faded slowly from the traveler's skin as the square fell silent. The ritual was over. They had chosen themselves.